Recently, we put out a video going over the complete history of all fan speculation over who would be the next Straw Hat pirate in One Piece. So today, we're going to take some of those raw facts and apply them to the current batch of contenders for the next seat on the Straw Hat crew, and see if any of them stand up under speculation. We won't be going over popular non-Wano choices, like Vivi or Smoker today, but instead only characters who could be sailing away from Wano on the Straw Hat ship. Why? Well, Oda has left the state of the world outside Wano incredibly up in the air, so any speculation about characters outside of Wano would be just that, speculation. And this video is all about laying down the cold, hard facts, like them or not. Now, of course, there are a few things we want to keep in mind. 1. None of these are just opinions. They are observations based on what we've seen in the past in the series. 2. These patterns still do not guarantee if someone will join or not. We've seen Oda break the quote-unquote rules before, such as in the cases of Robin or Jinbei. And 3. The rules of what qualifies someone as a Straw Hat have changed over the course of the story. For instance, in the East Blue, we got one member of the crew per island. Then, in the Grand Line, we got one member per saga, as Robin technically joined in the Skypiea saga. And in the New World, well, we only got one member total. So since we've started the New World, we don't actually have any patterns of recruitment for this part of the story, since it requires more than one thing to happen for a pattern to form. With that in mind, firstly, let's talk about one option that occasionally comes up, that no one will join the Straw Hat crew. Should we assume that the current crew is all we're getting? Is this video pointless? Well, Oda has a very good track record of coming through to give us the exciting outcome that we crave, which is why you've probably continued this story through 1,000 chapters. He must know that we are looking very seriously at Luffy's 10 crewmate statement as an unshakable truth, and he really always follows through on his foreshadowing. So, to be honest, we can expect at least one more crew member. Besides, he's been dangling the idea of someone joining in front of us, all of Wano, so he isn't going to just lol JK us. That isn't his style. Of course, after the next crew member joins, we honestly may get no more new crewmates. I personally am going to be very hesitant about speculating after this, but I know we're getting at least one more. So with that out of the way, let's look at what we learned in the last video and try to guess who the next crewmate will be. I guess we can start off with Carrot. May as well rip that band-aid off. A lot of people have cited the fact that Carrot has sailed so long with the crew as a strong reason to believe she will join. However, if we look at the story so far, that is actually an enormous detractor. Any character who has sailed with the crew has either been declared a crew member by Luffy, or they just don't keep sailing with the crew. Longtime sailing partners really have a poor track record of sticking around unless Luffy says they will. There's Johnny and Yusaku, Vivi and Karoo, Kinemon and Kenjuro, and of course everyone's favorite, Caesar. And that's just the ones who sailed with them for multiple arcs. Does this also rule out Momo and Law? Well, maybe, but if you notice, Luffy has declared both of them his friends before, even telling Cavendish that he already considered Law to be his subordinate. So while this seems to be a serious strike against the samurai joining or Carrot joining, it would appear that this doesn't hurt Momo and Law's chances quite as much. What about Carrot's sad backstory? Many people cite the death of Pedro as her sad backstory. However, if we look at the story so far, this event strikes a more accurate parallel with Vivi than any other Straw Hat. Both of them enjoyed a very happy childhood, and it wasn't until sailing with the Straw Hats that they watched their mentor sacrifice themselves in a violent explosion to save the person in question, along with, of course, the rest of the Straw Hats. Now, I've compared Carrot a lot to Vivi, who is in reality an honorary Straw Hat. Is Carrot the same though? Will she become an honorary Straw Hat? Well, think about what made Vivi such a clear candidate for joining the crew. 1. There was an arc, nay, a saga, entirely dedicated to Vivi's story. 2. And probably more importantly, her relationship with each of the Straw Hats was deep and well developed. They truly felt like she was a member of the crew by the time she left. What about Carrot? Well, she has been in 3 arcs so far, but have they been about her? We barely saw her at all in Zao. In Whole Cake, she was a supporting fighter and a source of occasional gags, and in Wano, she vanished entirely until recently, where she was destroyed by Perospero. If Carrot sailed away from Wano as a Straw Hat, she would be the only Straw Hat without an arc centered around her story. Now, of course, Robin's story came after her joining, so this isn't a surefire death sentence to the Carrot will join theory, but it is worth noting. What about Carrot's relationship to the crew? Well, she did fight Zoro once when they met, but that's about all they've interacted. Granted, Zoro didn't interact with Vivi as much as the rest of the crew did, and he did fight her when they first met, but these two events were very notably different. Also, while Carrot never really interacted with Frankie, Usopp, or Robin, she did spend a lot of time with Chopper, Luffy, Nami, Brook, and Jinbei, right? Well, sort of. More than anything, she really just spent a lot of time with Chopper. She was with him in the mirror for most of the story up until they reunited and the battle for survival ensued at the end of the arc. She did have a fairly heartfelt moment with Sanji toward the end, but it is notable that Luffy didn't actually spend any serious quality time with Carrot. I mean, she did try to rip out his jugular once, though, so there's that. And while there are certainly other factors we could cite that would either serve as detractors or boons for the argument for or against her, we're focusing on comparing her to characters that were speculated on in the past today. And unfortunately, she seems to have a lot more in common with the ones that didn't join the crew than the ones who did. Next up, let's talk about Tama, because why not? There isn't a lot to look back on when it comes to Tama, as she is quite different from any other candidate before her. Of course, she is the one who approached Luffy with the proposition to join the crew, something that has about a 50-50 success rate so far. Most people seem to have primarily founded their speculation on that fact. Now, of course, Tama could still potentially have more of a backstory, especially since a popular theory is that she is a Kurozumi member. But as things stand, her backstory is comparable to Usopp's at best, in terms of depth. And considering how Oda has tended to give Straw Hats longer and longer flashbacks as the story goes on, we would obviously be getting more of her past if she was to join. Also of note, if Tama joins, this would be the first child member of the crew, and even more notably, the first non-battle ready member. Aside from Nami and Usopp, all the Straw Hats until now have been presented as combatants to be reckoned with. And honestly, even Nami and Usopp were presented as being fighters worth their salt at their introduction, even if they weren't legendary monsters like Zoro or Jinbei. Tama, on the other hand, lacks any combat ability whatsoever. The last time we met a prospective crewmate like this, we left them on an island of strange animals after they decided they needed to stay behind with their animal friends. Another point that a lot of people reference is the fact that Momo and Tama can be compared to Shanks and Buggy, who were on Roger's crew as children. After seeing that Roger sailed with kids, a lot of people believe Momo and Tama will be a parallel pair on the future Pirate King's ship. Now, the question is it valid to assume Roger's crew will have that many parallels with Luffy's crew? Well, obviously Roger and Luffy, as characters, do have a lot in common, from their hat to their dream, and they even look a little similar. Plus, as far as their crew goes, Ray and Zoro both use swords and have an eye scar, and both of their ships were made by Tom's workers. Plus, both of them also had a weird-nosed coward and a half-human, half-nature doctor. Wait, Momo and Tama are the Buggy Shanks parallel here, not Usopp. Alright, so there are some parallels, but what about Sanji's parallel? Robin's? Brook's? Jinbei's? Nami's? Basically, the point is, there are parallels, sure, but it is more common for Luffy's crew to have distinct differences from Roger's than it is for them to have similarities. We can hardly expect that anything Roger's crew did or was will be seen one-to-one in Luffy's, of course with the exception of their destination. Does that mean Momo and Tama won't join? Well, no, it doesn't mean that either. Simply put though, just because Roger had little kids on his ship doesn't mean Luffy 100% will. Like I said before, Tama does not have much in common with people who have been speculated on in the past. Unfortunately, however, I have noticed that she seems to have more in common narratively with the arc's damsel than the arc's prospective crewmate. And what about Momo? Momo does, to a lesser extent, fall into the same category as Carrot, a longtime sailing buddy who is yet to be declared a member of the crew. Unlike Law, whom apparently Luffy assumed had joined the crew by the time he started sailing with them, Luffy knows Momo has a destination, just like Vivi did. Of course, just like Vivi, and unlike Carrot, a lot of the crew have developed something of a bond with the little snot. Maybe this time, they won't have to leave the little prince behind. Basically, what I'm saying is his chances are about what Vivi's were in Alabasta. Also of note, unlike Tama, Momo may have some bite behind his attacks, at least eventually. He has a copy of Kaido's ability, one we now know was probably a success. He also has been training in swordplay with Zoro, and has his father's very powerful sword. So once again, much like Vivi, he is just over that threshold of people thinking, I don't know, he's kinda weak. So the question of course remains, will the crew sail away with Momo waving goodbye from the shore, or will the pirate's crossbones call him to the sea with them, following closely in his father's footsteps? Well, I don't know. It probably depends on how much of Wano is left after Kaido tries to drop an island on it. Speaking of Kaido, let's smoothly transition into talking about Yamato. A lot of people compare Yamato to Robin, since they would both be the second to join their respective seas, if Yamato does join that is. They both asked Luffy to join personally, but I disagree. If anything, I think Yamato is a lot like Usopp. A lot of people forget that Usopp offered to join the crew almost immediately when he was introduced. Much like Yamato, Usopp's offer was very unappealing to Luffy. Both characters were also emotionally stunted by their trash fathers, and because of their father's actions, these characters spent their whole life before Luffy playing make-believe. The one difference is that Luffy supported Usopp's delusion and helped him live out his dream, whereas Luffy seems to object quite strongly to Yamato's. Unfortunately, Yamato has had a very small part in the story so far, having only just been introduced, so we can't speculate too much. Much like Carrot though, there are a lot of other factors we could take into account, but we're not doing a full breakdown today. We're only looking at patterns. Also, I'm not going to talk too much about Law, since I've already made 2 videos about why he'll join. You can check them out in the description. And I think the ulti speculation is dead, so we don't really have to talk about her either. Caribou, on the other hand, well, he's basically a shoo-in, so I think we can leave it at that.
Yo!
Geigo! Hey there!
Don't leave without subbing.
Hey there!
Don't leave without liking.
Hey there!
Don't forget to comment. Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell.